The stars stretched endlessly across the void of space, and in the heart of the Andromeda sector there was a name whispered in fear, a name that sent shivers down the spines of every alien race that roamed the galaxies. She was a force beyond reckoning, a storm wrapped in human form. And to those who had seen her, they knew her only as the one who could not be defeated, the one whose power eclipsed the laws of the universe. Yet for all the fear and chaos she inspired, no one truly knew who she was, where she came from, or why she wielded such terrible might. Across the galaxy, civilizations fell silent when the mere thought of her existence reached their ears. They spoke of planets left in ruins, of entire armadas torn apart like fragile paper, and of leaders who once commanded systems, now reduced to nothing more than whispers in the cosmic winds. They called her the Dark Star, the Void Queen, the Last Shadow, but among them none dared to utter her true name, for to do so was to invite destruction upon themselves. Yet in the midst of all the fear and whispered legends, there was one being who did not flee, one who did not cower, one who saw something beyond the destruction and the terror, and that was a human, a single traveler, lost in the vastness of space, one whose name had long been forgotten by the archives of Earth, one who did not see her as a nightmare, but as something else, something deeper, something broken. He had wandered the edges of known space, searching for a purpose, a reason to exist in the great unknown. When he first heard of her, he did not believe the stories, for they seemed too grand, too impossible, too drenched in horror to be real. But as he moved from world to world, hearing the same tales, the same warnings, the same desperate fear, he realized that perhaps there was more truth to the myth than he had ever considered. The first time he saw her, he did not see a monster, he did not see a being of pure destruction. Standing amidst the wreckage of a fallen fleet, he saw a woman alone, her eyes distant, her posture heavy with something deeper than rage, deeper than power. He saw sorrow woven into her very being, and in that moment he understood that she was not the destroyer they claimed her to be. She was something else entirely. She looked at him, and for the first time in her existence, she did not see an enemy, she did not see a creature of weakness, nor a threat. She saw something foreign, something strange, something that should not exist in the world she had come to know. And yet here he stood looking at her, not with terror, but with something else, with curiosity, with wonder, with the faintest trace of recognition. The universe had long since decided what she was. She had become the embodiment of annihilation, the walking storm that could not be stopped. But for this lone human, he did not see her as the others did. He did not raise his weapon, he did not flee. Instead, he spoke to her, and the sound of his voice was like a ripple in the stillness of space. She had not heard words spoken without fear in so many cycles. She had forgotten what it meant to listen to something other than screams, to something other than the wails of those who knew their end had come. Yet this human did not cry out, he did not shudder in her presence, and she found herself caught in the quiet pull of his words. He told her his name, a simple name, one that held no great power, no legendary weight, just a name spoken without expectation. And for the first time in a lifetime of war and destruction, she felt something shift deep within her, a memory, a whisper of something lost, something buried beneath the tides of time. The galaxies had known her as the one to be feared, but this human saw her as something more. He asked her questions, not about the destruction she had wrought, not about the chaos she had left in her wake, but about her, about who she was before the stories, before the terror, before the power consumed her. And she had no answer for him. There was silence between them, silence that stretched beyond the void, beyond the shattered remains of the world she had torn asunder, and in that silence she found a question rising within her, one she had not dared to ask herself in an eternity. Who was she truly, if not the being they feared? The universe watched as something changed, something no being could have predicted. The human did not run, he did not tremble in her presence. Instead, he listened, and as the days passed, she found herself speaking more than she had in years. He told her of Earth, of the place where humanity had once looked up at the stars in wonder, before it had been consumed by war and greed and ambition. He told her of the dreams they once held, of the stories they told, of the hope that once burned within them, and for the first time she found herself listening, truly listening. The power she held had been the thing that defined her for so long, but in this human she found something else, something unshaken, something that did not bend beneath the weight of her legend. He spoke to her not as a god, not as a destroyer, but as a person, as someone who existed beyond the name she had been given. The walls she had built within herself began to crack. The endless void she had once embraced began to feel colder, emptier, more hollow than before, and for the first time she wondered what it would mean to step beyond the role she had been forced into. The human did not ask her to change, he did not demand she become something else. He simply saw her for what she was, what she had once been, what she could still be, and in that seeing she found herself standing at a threshold she had never dared approach before. The galaxies still whispered her name in fear, but now there was another whisper, one that spoke of something impossible, something unthinkable, a being of destruction standing, still standing silent, standing beside a single human who did not cower. The choices before her were vast as the endless skies she had torn through time and time again. She could continue on as she always had, or she could choose something else, something terrifying, something unknown. She looked at the human, and for the first time in an eternity she saw not just a fleeting life, not just a fragile being doomed to fade, but something more, a force all his own, not in power, not in destruction, but in the way he endured, in the way he saw her, in the way he made her believe she could be something else. The universe would remember many things, but on this day it would remember the moment the most feared being in existence made a choice. And that choice changed everything, and so she turned her back on the destruction, on the legend, on the darkness she had become. And together they walked forward into the unknown, where new legends would be born. The journey into the unknown was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The endless expanse of space stretched before them, not as a battlefield, but as a place of infinite possibilities. Each star they passed felt different, no longer distant points of conquest, but beacons of something new, something waiting to be discovered. He spoke of humanity's past, of the wars they had fought, the mistakes they had made, and the lessons they had learned. He spoke of love and loss, of friendship and betrayal, and as she listened, she felt something stir within her, something she had buried so long ago that she had forgotten it ever existed. They traveled from system to system, no longer as destroyer and survivor, but as explorers. She found herself fascinated by the small details of life, things she had once overlooked, the way the light of a dying sun painted a planet's surface in gold and crimson, the laughter of children on a distant world untouched by war, the gentle hum of a ship moving through the void. Her presence still evoked fear in those who recognized her name. Entire civilizations had spent generations whispering of her destruction. But as time passed and rumors spread of her newfound path, those whispers began to change. Fear gave way to curiosity, then to awe, and then to something she had never dared to hope for, acceptance. The human who had stood beside her became more than just a companion. He became a guide, a tether to a life she had long abandoned. He showed her that power was not just destruction, that strength was not just terror. He taught her what it meant to heal, to build, to protect. She found herself returning to places she had left in ruin, not as a conqueror, but as something else. She watched as people slowly came out of hiding, hesitant, uncertain, and yet willing to listen, willing to believe that perhaps she was no longer the force of annihilation they had once feared. For the first time in her existence, she felt the weight of what she had done, truly felt it, not as an echo in the back of her mind, but as a tangible force pressing against her soul. She did not run from it, she did not bury it, instead she faced it. And in facing it she found something unexpected: forgiveness. There were those who would never accept her, who would never forget the destruction she had wrought, but there were others who saw what she was becoming, who saw that even the most feared being in the galaxy could change, and in their eyes she found something she had never thought possible: hope. The whispers of fear had faded, replaced by a new legend, one that spoke of the woman who had once been a force of destruction, but who had chosen a different path. They called her many things: the wanderer, the fallen star, the guardian. And for the first time in her life she did not shy away from the names, for they were not born of fear, but of something else, something she had spent an eternity searching for meaning. As they stood on the edge of a new world, watching the twin suns rise over a land untouched by war. She turned to the human, who had seen her not as a monster, but as something more. He smiled at her and she felt the weight of the past finally begin to lift. She had been feared, she had been hated, she had been a legend of destruction, but now she was something else. She was free.